Exactly.
Now, do you think that Trump's comments precipitated Comey to take an about face and then go after Flynn, or you think
they were going after
they were
Flynn
going after
before.
Flynn no matter what?
They had already decided to go after Flynn. And we also found evidence that the government disclosed to Covington after the guilty plea, months after the guilty plea, that there's a DOJ memo that completely exonerates Flynn of all things Russia that was entered in the file by January 30 of 2017 before Flynn left the White House. And nobody in the FBI or DOJ bothered to tell the president about that. So when Comey sat there and created the obstruction narrative, he knew Flynn had already been cleared of everything.
Well, doesn't a federal prosecutor have a duty not just to obtain a conviction, but to disclose evidence that will tend to clear the defendant?
Absolutely, but the excuse they've made for this is that Brady doesn't apply during plea negotiations. And they put enormous pressure on General Flynn to plead immediately under threat of indicting him and his son, who had a 4-month-old baby, the very next day if he didn't plead. And they did that because the Strzok Page stuff was about to blow up in the news. They had to have known that. It came out the day after Flynn's guilty plea. And they hid all that from the defense.
Now, do you think that all these people are going to walk, Page and McCabe and all the buddies, because...
well, Durham had some...
Well, I like Cindy to Ms. Powell to answer that question. Do you think Durham is working hard to find convictions of high-ups like those we just mentioned?
I think he's working hard to find out exactly what happened and what the evidence of criminal conduct is or might be.
So
I would think he can find that because they all knew the entire narrative was a lie because they made it up.
Yes, it really is a giant hoax.
All right, so Sydney, let me ask you a big question that you may or may not want to answer, which is, this is a really complicated, organized, involving many people, conspiracy, scheme. Did President Obama know about this?
Well, I mean, there are multiple Strzok Page text messages about the White House is running this. So Obama wants to know everything. So I can't imagine that he did not. In fact, he was in the meeting in the White House with Comey and Sally Yates and Biden and Clapper and Brennan on January 5th before Comey was dispatched to talk to incoming President Trump the next day to tell him only the salacious aspects of the Steele dossier, which was part of the setup. And Comey writes his first memo after that saying he executed it exactly as it was planned. And yes, he knew it all.
So he was really orchestrating this whole thing.
Whether he orchestrated it or not, he certainly knew about it.
And a lot of these guys don't need to be told exactly what to do. It's like Lois Lerner at the IRS didn't need to be told by Obama to do what she did. So it was they all had the common mindset.
Yes.
Well, Obama himself...
very carefully to accomplish the objective they knew they all wanted to accomplish.
Okay, so now why did they pick Flynn? Simply because he didn't like how the president, commander-in-chief, was dealing with ISIS?
Flynn was one of the few members of the administration,
the Obama administration,
who did not fall into the political correctness, especially about Muslims. He called out Islam as being a dangerous ideology, and Obama had a big purge where anybody any evidence that Muslims was an ideological threat to America was purged.
Especially after he invited all the CARE individuals into the White House.
Part of it. So I think, and maybe Sydney, you can tell me what you think of my theory, but I think that because Flynn was such an outspoken guy, number one, supported Trump in the campaign, and then was very outspoken about the danger from Islam. And
yes, there were a number of things. That was one of them. The other was it was widely known he was going to audit the intel agencies for all the billions that Brennan in particular was running off books. He was going to reduce the bloated National Security Council that Obama had created.
Right.
He was outspoken against the war in Afghanistan. In fact, there's a memo written by the person that was doing the review of that was recently published in the Afghanistan papers on the Washington Post website, where you can see how vehement he was about all the problems with the participation of the United States in Afghanistan. And, of course, course, he knew about all the Benghazi screw-ups. He knew where all the bodies were buried because he was Obama's head of the Defense Intelligence Agency, and he's been an outstanding member of the military intelligence community for 33 years.
Yeah,
So
it's just
we
a
can't
slam
wait for
dunk.
him to write his memoirs.
No, there's no chance of a second term for Trump to re-invite General Flynn into the administration?
Well, first we need the guilty plea withdrawn or the case dismissed for egregious government misconduct, which I've also requested for countless reasons, not the least of which are all the exculpatory evidence they've hidden and even what was revealed by the December Inspector General's report about slipping that agent in to the presidential briefing, which has never happened before in the history of the country, and Christopher Wray says it will never happen again. I mean, that was just absolutely an appalling act of breach of trust that's supposed to exist in that relationship.
Yeah, it is pretty appalling. So, is there, if all things considered, which we find very offensive, do you think that Flynn, at the worst, if things go bad for him, that he's definitely a pardoned associate for Trump? I mean, Trump will pardon him?
Well, the president seemed to have indicated he's certainly considering that, and there would be no better candidate for it than General Flynn. My personal preference is that the Department of Justice and the FBI do what's right and admit what happened here, because as a person who seeks justice, I know that the Department and the FBI are going to have no credibility whatsoever until they make this right.
Yeah, I agree with you.